esteemed panel for your presence today. I am reminded of the trip that Justice Scalia took. It was his last one. It was to the 30,000-acre resort home with exquisite furnishings and lodging, owned by John B. Poindexter, a Houston-based manufacturing industrialist who had business before the U.S. Supreme Court the year before, which resulted in the U.S. Supreme Court deciding not to hear his case. Justice Scalia did not recuse in that matter. But anyway, he's at this luxury resort, 30,000 acres, miles away from the nearest airport. The travel was by private jet from Washington to Texas, and then to get from the airport in Texas out to that exclusive area, which was only 30 miles away from the Mexican border, took some doing. I don't know if it was by a helicopter or by a limo, certainly not a cab, and there were 35 other guests hanging out at that weekend jaunt. Mr. Poindexter admitted to the Washington Post that he did not charge Justice Scalia to come and spend that weekend at that exclusive resort or hunting preserve, whatever it is. But the fact that he was there, the fact that we don't know who paid for it, how much it cost, who was present, it could have been people with pending business before the U.S. Supreme Court who had the opportunity in those exclusive confines to be able to discuss their case or the issues involving their case with Justice Scalia. Does anyone, particularly you, Ms. Tuberville, have any problems with the visual that I've tried to describe to you and what that does to the public's ability to have confidence in the integrity of the judiciary, particularly the U.S. Supreme Court?
Thank you, Congressman. I could not agree more that those are the types of instances that I think give rise to the public's perception that the justices play by a different set of rules. And I think those instances also make clear that, perhaps there was nothing that was impropriate occurring at that ranch with Mr. Poindexter. But we are no longer in the position of being able to give the High Court the benefit of the doubt. And it would seem to me that it is appropriate for this court, whose decisions impact a far broader swath of America than any other court in the country, and whose decisions are irreversible, to be held at minimum to a basic code of conduct, and one that could have a commentary that would address these kinds of circumstances. So I think that many Americans are bothered by instances like that. This is not a partisan issue. There's been instances of justices from both the conservative wing and the liberal wing who have perhaps engaged in conduct that we don't know all the facts about, but the disclosure rules are not that robust either.
The fact is that HR Section 7001 of HR 1 would require the Judicial Conference to issue a code of conduct that would apply to all federal judges, including U.S. Supreme Court justices. Mr. von Spakovsky, you take issue with that. Your opinion is that because the U.S. Supreme Court is constitutionally established, not legislatively, and it is co-equal and independent, then it logically follows that the legislative branch cannot impose a code of conduct on the Supreme Court. Ms. Tuberville, you disagree with that. Why?
Well, I think that there's a long history of the Congress exercising its constitutional prerogative to pass laws that govern the form and function of the United States Supreme Court. And that includes recusal decisions, that includes financial disclosure obligations, that includes, I said this a little bit earlier, mandating the size of the court and determining the length and the date of the term of the Supreme Court. Here, we're not even talking about looking to a sort of complaint process like that found in the Judicial Conduct and Disability Act. We're talking about a basic code of conduct that the highest court of the land ought to bind itself to. And I also want to let the committee know that I've looked into the most recent polling on this conducted by a group called Fix the Court, and they actually enlisted both a sort of Republican-aligned and a Democratic-aligned polling company, and found that 86% of Americans support a code of conduct for the Supreme Court. You cannot get 86% of Americans to agree on anything. So I would suggest that this is something whose time has come, that the American people support, and that would be a very good thing for the legitimacy of our nation's highest court.
Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Adams,